Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever in the world you may be joining us from today. My name is Francesco Del Carpio, and I am the CFAL York Operations Coordinator. I would like to officially open this presentation on solar eclipse safety tips and cool tricks with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge and recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territory upon which our campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. The area is known as Tkaronto and has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and that the territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. As this is an online event, our participants may be joining from various locations, so I strongly encourage you to learn about the traditional land upon which you are located. With this, I welcome our moderator, our speakers, and our participants from around the world. Welcome to our webinar. For those who may not be familiar with CFAL York, our center was established in 2020 and started its operations in 2021. CFAL York was created in collaboration between the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, or UNITAR, and York University with York Region to develop and deliver training and knowledge sharing, as well as capacity building programs across 5 focus areas, which are disaster risk, emergency management, and humanitarian actions, health development, environment and climate change, entrepreneurship, digital technology and economic development, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and advancing the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our moderator today, Dr. Elaina Hyde. Dr. Hyde's research is in and above the cloud, combining astrophysics, data science, cloud computing, planetary sciences, optical engineering, telescope operations, and telescope observations. Her primary astrophysical research focus is galactic archaeology. She has worked with instrumentation and telescopes around the world, and her experience enables her to provide technical leadership for York University's Allan Carswell Astronomical Observatory. Another motivation for her is the promotion of astronomy, education, and research through public telescope activities and exploration. As a lecturer, trainer, and consultant, she innovates teaching methodologies for interdisciplinary audiences across the sciences, as well as for businesses, students, and the general public. She is also a certified Google Cloud Trainer and Google Cloud Engineer, and has considerable experience as a trainer and consultant in data science in the private sector. Dr. Hyde, thank you very much for moderating and participating in today's webinar. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Very happy to be here talking about all things safety and eclipses. It's very exciting times, and we've got lots of wonderful people joining us today on this sort of ad hoc safety panel, as it were. So I know we're also joined by Dr. Sarah Rugheimer, who's here sort of with me in adjoining offices, who is our Allan Carswell Chair for Public Understanding, and now, I believe we might go ahead and start with your information, Sarah. You've got some wonderful stuff lined up for eclipse safety. So let's go ahead and run through some safety stuff with you, and then as time allows, or as the connection is good, we might also be joined by Professor Robin Metcalfe, who is currently on her way, I believe, to Texas to view this solar eclipse. So just as an FYI to people listening, we have a little bit of a dynamic presentation today. So for now, let's go ahead and find out a little bit of safety information. Take it away, Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the eclipse and how to make sure that you have both a fun and safe time in this great adventure. And the first thing I want to make sure that people are aware of is that there's a difference between totality and a partial phased eclipse. So I think this is one of the main misconceptions I come across, is that being in the 99% path of the eclipse is 99% of the experience, but it's really not. The amount of sunlight that comes through, even at 1%, is very, very bright. And so this top photo shows an area taken where the sun is 99% eclipsed, and the bottom, the same area at 100% eclipsed. And so Toronto is not in totality. Toronto's at 99.56% eclipsed, depending on where you are. And so that is going to be a partial phase eclipse for the whole time. if you want to get to totality, to have that experience that you see on Instagram where you see those beautiful photos, you have to drive or take the GO train to one of the areas around us, you know, Hamilton, Niagara, Kingston. These areas are going to be in totality. And of course, there's eclipse traffic, so leave early as possible to try to get to those places. And so to just drive this point home, and this is relevant to safety, 1% of the sunlight is still very bright and damaging to your eyes. So 1% of the sunlight is around the equivalent of 4,000 full moons in the sky, which is why it's still quite bright, whereas totality is more like 10 moons. So even though there's some misconceptions I've heard that like, oh, can we use sunglasses? No, you need the proper eclipse glasses to safely view this eclipse, or using pinhole cameras during all partial phases of the eclipse. And so that's like one misconception that I hear, is that they think they can get away with sunglasses or welder's glasses, and those are also not safe. So if you want to see something though like this, you really need to get to totality. This is where you can actually see when the moon fully is in front of the sun, you can see the solar corona and that beautiful, awe-inspiring experience. And you're not going to be able to see that from a place like Toronto. You need to go to the total eclipse path. I found this quote by writer Annie Dillard, and she said, "Seeing a partial eclipse bears the same relation to seeing a total eclipse as kissing a man does to marrying him." So they're just different experiences. And so here is the path, showing the path of totality along this map. And so like to just drive home the point there is totality or not totality. There's not 99% of totality, though you can still have a lot of fun seeing the partial phases of the eclipse if you can't get to totality. So timeanddate.com is a wonderful resource for you. It has a lot of great eclipse information. You can search for the April 8th eclipse, and there's a zoomable map there. And here is that map zoomed in, and you can drop a pin, and then you can see a lot of cool information. So here on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that I've dropped a map pin at Niagara, and it says the duration of totality is 3 minutes, 31 seconds. It tells you when the partial eclipse begins at 2:04 p.m., when the full begins, the maximum, when the full ends, partial ends, as well as it gives you the average cloud coverage for that region. We'll come back to clouds in a minute, but there's just lots of information on this website, and you can see those two lines. That's the edges of totality, and that center dashed line is the center of totality, and that's where your maximum eclipse time is. If you're in Hamilton, I think it's a little over a minute and a half or something is the maximum eclipse time for the totality part. I also want to recommend this app. It's a free, amazing app which will talk you through all of the aspects of the eclipse and various cool science things to look out for. And because your phone has your geographical information, it'll tailor the information and timing to your location. So it's called Solar Eclipse Timer. And so you turn this app on, you make sure your speaker's on, and then it'll tell you to look out for certain things like how colors change, or you know, the various aspects of the eclipse. So I think it's a really great resource, and I'd recommend that everyone have that app. It's available on Apple or Android for free. There's another resource that I want to point out, which is this video on YouTube. It's from Smarter Every Day. It has a lot of information on cool things to look out for with eclipses, and it goes more in detail into the science and different science experiments that you can do on the day to try to maximize your eclipse experience. Okay. Important safety. Do not look at the sun, right? During any partial phases of the eclipse, you cannot look at the sun. Even 1% of sunlight is damaging to the eye. And again, to drive home this point, sunglasses are not safe. Welding glasses are not safe. So let's not be stupid, right? We need to prioritize our safety. You need to have eclipse glasses or use a pinhole camera, but make sure your eclipse glasses are from reputable suppliers. You know, there's online people sell eclipse glasses, and sometimes they are fakes, basically, claiming to be reputable and they're not. So in 2017, Amazon actually had to recall millions of eclipse glasses for this reason. On the American Astronomical website, there is a list of reputable vendors, and people can go to that website to see if their eclipse glasses are safe. These ones we have at York University are from American Paper Optics, eclipseglasses.com, and they are indeed safe and have been tested in a lab to have the correct ISO rating. So we want to make sure that we have them safely on our eye. It's best to like hold them there so they don't slip and you don't you know, accidentally see the sun. You also can't use binoculars with eclipse glasses. That's very important. Binoculars magnify the intensity of the sun, and that's dangerous. These are not designed to be used with binoculars. So you can hold them up to your face and you can safely look at the eclipse that way. Now, another thing that sometimes people miss is that if you're in the path of totality, so that would be Niagara, Hamilton, one of those areas, during totality, so this 1 to 3 minute period at the maximum part of the eclipse when the moon has fully come in front of the sun and the sky darkens, then it is safe to remove your eclipse glasses and look directly at the sun. And indeed you have to, because that's how you're going to see the most beautiful part of the eclipse. So at this point, when you can no longer see any light coming through your eclipse glasses and the moon is fully in front of the sun, if you're in totality, if and only if you're in the path of totality, you can then look at the sun without any eye protection. So this is yet another piece of this safety puzzle. Is people are often confused as like, when is it safe, when is it not safe? For all partial phases of the eclipse, and if you're in Toronto or outside of the path of totality, you always have to be using the eclipse glasses. And if you're in totality for most of the eclipse, for 99%, you need to wear these. But for the few minutes of totality, you need to take them off to see the thing that everyone is most excited about and drives for thousands of miles, travels for thousands of miles to see. This is the part of the eclipse that some people have referred to as akin to the birth of their child. It's an awe-inducing moment. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I'm clear skies, hopefully. With that, so we may have clouds on the day, but don't lose hope. So one thing that happens is as the moon's coming in front of the sun, the temperature is changing in our atmosphere and dropping. And so the condensation point of where clouds form changes. And so often 10 to 15 minutes before totality, those clouds disappear. And so just don't lose hope. If you've gone all the way to totality and there's clouds, it still might clear up right before. This is a video that actually doesn't play for some reason on my laptop, but I recommend going on YouTube and searching an eclipse from a plane. It's a wonderful video, and it just shows you over the clouds how fast the shadow is moving of the eclipse. It moves at thousands of kilometers per hour. And so it's quite a dramatic thing. And if you're on kind of a wide open space, you can see that as well right before totality descends. You can also do cool things, safe things with your kids and family to see the partial phases of the eclipse. One is you can use a kitchen colander. I have one right here, in fact, and basically you can just take this outside. You have a white towel, white sheet, or something like that, and the sun is behind the colander, and then that projects, as you can see here in this image, the images of the partially eclipsed sun onto a white sheet of paper or towel. You can also just do this with by poking a pen through a sheet of paper and also seeing a pinhole. And you can even, say, write your name or your kids' names and do that and see those partial eclipses on there. There's another cool, two other cool ways to look at pinhole cameras. One is tree leaves make a really good pinhole camera. So look down underneath trees and you might see many little partial eclipse suns, as well as your fingers make a good pinhole camera too. So by creating a little space between your fingers, you're able to also perhaps see the little mini eclipses on, again, a white surface. There's one of the coolest things that I am hoping that to see during this eclipse is you can actually see the sunlight going through the mountains and valleys of the moon just before and after totality. This phenomenon is called Bailey's beads. And so this is still during the partial phase of the eclipse, so you have to be careful, use your eclipse glasses, and look out for those. There's another thing called shadow bands or snakes, and this happens about 10 to 15 seconds before and after totality. And a colleague of mine who actually is here today has said that a lot of people, they're looking at the sun right before totality. And actually you should look down right before totality, look down onto a white surface, because it's a subtle effect, but these shadow bands or snakes move across a white surface on the ground, or snow if that happens to be the case. And the sky needs to be fairly clear to see these. You're not able to see them every eclipse, but it is a really cool effect. And it's the effect of a line source of light, because you only have now that line of sunlight coming through rather than a point source going through Earth's turbulent atmosphere. So briefly, what causes an eclipse? So we have the Earth here, the moon and the sun, and this is when the moon is going between us and the sun. But, you know, the moon goes around the Earth every 29.5 days. So why isn't this happening once a month? And this is because you have the moon's orbit is on a 5-degree inclination. And so often the moon's shadow, as you can see here in this image, is just not falling on Earth. And so there is no eclipse, solar eclipse for that time. And so that's, it's pretty rare actually for those all to line up. It's about once every 18 months or so. And that's just for some small region on the planet. So usually it's not anywhere near as close to here. The next one in Canada is actually in 2044. And the next one in Toronto is in 375 years. So that's 2399. We probably won't be alive for that one. So this is by far the closest, easiest one for us to get to. What happens here is you can see that there's only a small part of the planet that has the full shadow, and a much larger region which will have partially eclipsed the partial shadow on the Earth. Some confusion sometimes arises between what's the difference between a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse. A lunar eclipse is where Earth's shadow falls on the moon, and a solar eclipse is where moon's shadow falls on Earth. Now, there's with the lunar eclipse, one thing that's really cool to think about is that the light that does come through and bends towards the moon is actually going through the limb of Earth's atmosphere. And so that's the color, that reddish color, comes from all sunsets of Earth shining on the moon at once. So take a look out for those. Those happen much more frequently. You'll maybe hear about them in the news. But for solar eclipses, which is what we're here for, there's a couple types of solar eclipse, right? So there's the total solar eclipse, which is what's happening on Monday. You can actually see this in the image on the right from space, from this Japanese satellite that took an image of Earth, and you can see that shadow of the eclipse, and it's a really cool picture. And so you have the total solar eclipse, and that's where the moon fully is in front of the sun, and you actually can really see the corona. There's another thing called an annular eclipse, and that's where the moon is a little bit further from Earth. So the moon has a slightly elliptical orbit, which means it's sometimes closer and further. And when it's closer, the moon is slightly bigger on our sky, and that is more able to block the full disk of the sun. And that also, the closer it is, the longer the totality phase lasts. So, the longest eclipses have been over 7 minutes, and short ones might only be a minute. This one, the maximum is around 4 minutes, depending on where you are. But if the moon is a little further away, it doesn't quite block the sun. That's called an annular eclipse. You can see that at the bottom. And for those, we had one in Canada last October. You need to wear the eclipse glasses the entire time. At no point is it safe to take off your eclipse glasses. And of course, for all partial phases of the eclipse, you need to have proper eye protection or be using a pinhole camera. So things to bring for your eclipse day. This is sometimes forgotten. We're all excited to go see the eclipse, but make sure you bring folding chairs and sunscreen and hats and eclipse glasses and snacks. Wear bright colored clothing because reds and greens will change, shadows will start to change. And just bring that childlike awe that you have for one of these events that relatively few humans on Earth have ever seen. So make sure you kind of take care of the body as well, as the spirit, as you go to see this awesome event. Make sure your eclipse glasses are safe, that they have this ISO 12312-2 rating, and they're from a reputable vendor. There has been cases of people claiming that rating and them not being tested in a lab. So we always recommend people go to the American Astronomical website, search for their list of reputable vendors. Of course, our ones from York University, we have gotten from that a safe vendor. In fact, the main vendor of North America and the one that produces their eclipse glasses for NASA. So if you can, go see the total solar eclipse. It's an hour away from Toronto. I understand if you can't, though, and still then view that safely, and the partial phases. This is a map of all the ones coming up in the future. You can see that there's, a lot of them, right? But they're only every 18 months or so, and they're often across the world. So the next one will be going through Europe in 2026. And, to get one back in North America will be in Western Canada in 2044. There's a particularly long one coming up in 21 years. Mark your calendars for 2045. That's coming through the US, and that will be, I think, over 6 minutes. So that is probably one of the longer ones we're going to be able to see. And so definitely keep that in mind for your future eclipse chasing. And that is all I have for my presentation, so I'll stop that.
Excellent. Thanks, Sarah. That's a great presentation. Maybe this is a good time to check in with our astronomer on the move, Robin. Are you there? Can you hear us?
I am. Am I coming in clear?
You are.
Perfect.
So, based on what Sarah has told us, I gather the weather on the day is going to be one of the most important things. You're traveling now to get the best weather, is that right?
We are, and actually not to Texas. That was the plan until a few days ago when we've been keeping a careful eye on the weather, and it's been looking more and more uncertain in Texas. So we ended up booking motels along the path all the way from Texas to New Brunswick. And yesterday we had a last minute emergency session where we decided to cancel the entire US leg because it was really looking uncertain in that direction, and Canada has been looking better. And so we are now on our way to Drummondville, Quebec. And that's going to be our jumping off point so that we could get ourselves to New Brunswick or even cross the border and into Vermont or upstate New York, or to come back west to Ontario if needed.
Wonderful. And I'm just pulling up an eclipse map from the same one that Sarah mentioned before, so that people can kind of get a little bit of an idea. So you're now thinking in Ontario to go north, is that right?
We're heading east.
East, okay. So northeast or just east?
Yes, northeast.
So that will follow the eclipse path, and of course, places like Montreal that are going to get sliced sort of in half. won't
Right.
have mass totality. What is the do you know what the maximum totality location you're going for is?
Grand Falls, New Brunswick. And I'm
Grand
not actually sure what part of New Brunswick that is.
Okay. Well, I'll put it up here. Maybe is it GRAN?
Grand. GRAND.
Ah. Grand Falls, New Brunswick. Okay, so yeah,
Mhm.
looks like they're getting a minute and 22 seconds.
So well, sorry, these towns are where we will be in our motels, but then the day of the eclipse, we will get ourselves as close as possible to the central path.
Yes, and this is the time and date map live, so that would be the dotted line for anyone who's watching.
Mhm.
On the dotted path around that area, you get about 3 minutes and 22 seconds. So are you
Right.
the solar safe viewing techniques with you on this trip?
Oh yes, this car is filled to the brims, and this is just one of 3 cars. We're sort of a convoy of 10 people, but we're just loaded in this particular car. So we have a 10-inch telescope with a solar filter. We've got 6 DSLRs, one of them with a lens that can go out to 1200 millimeters, and they all have we've got filters for all of them, 2 pairs of solar binoculars, 10 pairs of solar eclipse glasses. We're definitely well stocked. And then we have all of our like survival gear as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great that you mentioned binoculars because, of course, as Sarah said, it is not safe to use regular eclipse glasses with your
Right.
because of the magnification. So if you do have them, you'll need to have special binocular filters for those. But if you don't have filters, you can actually use them as a projector. If the diameter on the binocular opening is less than about sort of 2 or 3 inches, you can actually cast the light through them and not look through the binoculars at all, but project an image of the sun onto a the ground or a wall, or some people project it onto their neighbor's back. By just having that sunlight come through and act as a bit of a projector to get a larger crescent from it. So binoculars can be used in some cases, but it can never be looked directly through without special binocular filters. And you mentioned DSLR. That's a photography camera, correct?
Right.
So what kind of filters do you have to be able to take pictures?
I'm gonna have to ask the photographer sitting next to me, what filters do you have for your cameras?
Oh, the NG one, 10,000.
And a neutral density.
Neutral density.
What's the rating?
10,000.
10,000. I don't know what those units are, but 10,000 is a big number. That's got to be something.
Exactly. And so this is not safe, right? So you can't take pictures of a partial eclipse at all without something protecting your camera, because you don't want to damage that camera either, right?
My understanding is that with a wide field lens, I mean, with any camera, you can take a photo of the sun at any time, right? And but it's only if you zoom in, or as you say, like if it's magnified, then you could potentially do some damage to the camera. So with a really wide field, you can do it. It's just that you're not going to get a good shot of the eclipse. Like the sun is you're just going to get a lot of glare. So it would we are going to set up a camera like that, but that would be about capturing all the other stuff that's going on that Sarah mentioned, the changing colors of the sky, and what's going on with the people around us. So, but it's okay to have the sun in the view as long as the field is really large.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's if you're trying to get a picture of the actual event itself, your camera will probably just overexpose. It does have lenses in them, so I don't recommend people to take just pictures of the sun regularly, because it's just going to be a bright dot. For a partial eclipse, you definitely want to be taking a picture of something that is either filtered or projected. So the pinhole projection technique, or like you guys have some really excellent neutral density filters.
And you can, though, with your cell phone, you just hold your solar eclipse glasses over the lens of your phone, and that will capture the partial stages really nicely.
Yeah, and the trick is that there's not a lot of magnification, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's so this is something we want to caution people about for solar safety. You know, you if you're having your phone and you want to get a cool picture, in this case, the magnification on most phones will be very, very low. There's not a lot of optics in there. So if you block it, just make it a light tight block over your phone camera. And you can use, maybe if you have a second pair of glasses, these to block off the light for your phone camera to actually get a picture. So even though you can't use them for binoculars, you can't use them for telescopes, you can use them just to get a picture with most phones, but do be careful because we don't want people looking up at the sun with no protection, trying to get a picture from their phone.
Exactly. There is an app. It's a free app called Solar Snap, and it will take the picture on your phone and make sure that the settings are appropriate.
Solar Snap. Excellent. Is that a Samsung or a
Both.
both? Okay. All right. So Solar Snap recommendation. And of course, I've just put up on the screen some of our safe / not safe viewing techniques for the sun.
And of course, during the total phase, you want to take the protection off of your phone if you want to try to capture that. And the Solar Snap app actually has a setting for during the total phase.
Oh, excellent. Yes, and it's a good thing to sort of remind people most of the time you're out there, if you've been watching the time and date or looking at when things start, you're going to have a partial most of the time. So I've just put up a picture of sort of the phases of a total solar eclipse. You have a long period of partiality. It goes into a thin crescent. You have then maybe some people are only getting 20 or 30 seconds. Some people are going to get 1, 2, 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes of totality. And then it goes back to being a partial. And this is, you know, something that you would be filtering your camera and your eyeballs for all of the partial. And then, of course, taking the filters off to enjoy that totality. Wonderful. That's thank you very much, Robin.
My pleasure.
Good luck to everybody out there driving to the northeast now. That is actually one of the best locations currently up in the north towards this part of the eclipse path due to the weather largely. And I'll just go ahead and put a small advertisement as well for our Eclipse website here. So we have a Solar Eclipse 2024 website on with the lots and lots of information, including that interactive map you just saw, some good advice, and of course, the blogs. And this is where you can find the blogs for both Robin as well as Bruce Waters. And they're sending us updates. So you can actually follow along with Robin's blog here on the website if you want to. There's also a weather outlook tracker put up by our other sort of Eclipse blogger on the road, Bruce Waters, who's put up a whole table of weather forecasts and cloud considerations, shall I say. So if you want to follow along with any of that or get extra printouts of the solar safety flyer, the what is an eclipse flyer, or any of the brochures, we have that all up on our website for everybody to enjoy. And of course, if you just want to click around and see where your eclipse might be occurring, so wherever you are in North America, you can find out how close you are to that dotted line that is the center of totality, if you can get there safely or not, I suppose.
Actually, sorry to cut in, Elaina, but just to add to what Sarah was saying about clouds, even though the Niagara region right now, the weather is a little bit somewhat uncertain, that from what I've heard from people that chase total solar eclipses, that even seeing it on a cloudy day, that you can still tell it's going on, that you experience the darkening of the sky, and some interesting effects on the clouds as well. So if you are planning to head to Niagara or Burlington, wherever, it might, the weather report is not looking good, it might still be worth your while to head over there, especially because the crowds won't be as bad.
Yes, exactly. I heartily agree, and feel free to cut in anytime. If this is one of the things, as mentioned by Sarah, as mentioned by Robin, the totality is pretty spectacular. We definitely would encourage people to get there if you can safely. There are some good trains that run both north and south if you don't want to drive. And even if it is cloudy, if it's cloudy and you're in a partial eclipse region, you can't see anything, right? You're not going to get any part of the event. But as mentioned, if you're in the total eclipse area, that's where you're going to get the spectacular show. And even if it's cloudy, the skies turn dark, the temperature changes. You can still get strange behavior from animals. You still get the apparently there's this sort of telltale cold wind that blows through and gives everyone goosebumps. So it's still very much a special, unique event that you can enjoy, not as much as if it's clear, but pretty spectacular nonetheless. Absolutely. So Robin, do you have any other suggestions for Eclipse Chasers?
Sorry, for Eclipse Day.
Yeah, for Eclipse Chasers.
Oh, well, I mean, if you are planning to head to the Niagara area, it's going to be absolutely insane if it's a clear day. And I don't mean that to discourage it. That, like, it'll be an experience. There, millions of people. The QEW is going to be nuts. It's happening in the afternoon when the sun is high in the sky. So even if you get stuck on a QEW at that moment, everyone is going to stop their cars and get out and look up. So even that'll be a cool experience. But just, know that you're going to be outside, probably stuck somewhere for hours. Make sure you have water, gas in your car, something to eat, all that kind of stuff.
Yes, absolutely. If you are traveling, stock up as if maybe you're going camping, and make sure to bring everything you need, as mentioned by, I think, both Sarah and Robin earlier. So for eclipse safety, I hope we've given everybody a good run through of some different viewing techniques that you can use. I'll just go ahead and refer back again to if you don't have the solar glasses, or if you're not sure you can find any that are quality, everything looks a bit dodgy, you can actually create some very good images of the sun with these totally free pinhole viewing techniques. And so I have in my hand now an ordinary piece of paper. If you just take a thumbtack, and maybe if I hold this up to the camera, you'll be able to see it better. Just put a single hole through the center of the paper and cast that shadow on the ground. That's going to be a simple pinhole projector. And you can even use your hands, as Sarah mentioned, totally free. It creates a lovely little image of the sun through this projection technique. It's one of the oldest projection imaging techniques in the world. And you can use just about anything. A pasta strainer, if you have one, toss one in the car before you go out. If you feel like building something, though, you can actually make your own little box projector pretty easily. If you're feeling a bit crafty, you would like a safe, easy way to view the sun that doesn't involve looking at it. Projecting these shadows onto the ground or a wall can also be very relaxing. That way you're not like looking up for the entire 2+ hours that the event is going to be. And if you make a box projector, there's a nice technique I can refer you to. It's really just grabbing any kind of good cardboard box from your house that's reasonably small. So something like a shoebox or a cereal box are really, really popular ways to do it. And this is a simple schematic. So all you have to do is take your box, whatever that box is, and you cut a little hole in it. And this is a aluminum foil. Now you'd want to use aluminum foil because it actually creates a very, very nice pinhole. And just like with a piece of paper, all you have to do to make this a pinhole projector is stick a single pinhole through it. If you cut a strip of this aluminum foil, you can paste it into a rectangle that you cut out of the box and make a really, really nice pinhole viewer. Once your aluminum foil is pasted into a rectangle that you've cut out, you just poke it with one hole and you're all done. And well, you have to have an eyepiece viewer too. So you cut a second hole for an eye to look through, and the sun is behind you, so you're not looking at it at all. Shining through the pinhole, you're looking through a second hole and the shadow is cast on the back. So these are really easy to make. You just need aluminum foil, tape, a cereal box or a shoe box, and you know, one thumbtack or similar. And here's some of the ones that we did for our last solar event at York University. So this was one of the last ones, actually. We did one in 2022, but I have better pictures from the partial eclipse in 2021. So partial eclipses are fairly common, as I think mentioned earlier a little bit by Sarah. These things happen reasonably often. You're going to get quite a few chances to see them. So one of the other reasons why it's worth trying to get to totality, that's a lot more of an unusual event. But these partial eclipses, here's a bunch of pictures that we took in 2021 from the partial eclipse that came up with the sunset in Toronto. So that's the Toronto horizon at the bottom right there. And we had telescopes with solar safety filters on them. And we had box viewers. So this was a shoe box here in the middle, with aluminum foil taped over and a second hole for the eyes to look through. And of course, you can just take your pinhole camera as a piece of paper, and as long as you can cast a good shadow, you can get a good image of the sun. So all it has to be is a reasonably clear day. Now, just to reinforce a little bit what was meant with the amount of sun, the magnitude of a solar eclipse is a little bit of a funny thing. So as Sarah mentioned with her picture earlier, when you're going through a partial eclipse, you could have a 50% partial eclipse where with a projection technique, it would look like a bite is taken out of the sun. And in Toronto, we're even going to get to a 99% partial eclipse. But even then, the sun is so bright, even at 99% blocked, it's still bright enough to light up the sky, to make it look like daytime, to not have a shadow. So it's a very big difference between a partial or an annular eclipse and of course the total event that we're going to see. So for eclipse safety, I think, you know, with this particular event, I'll just call out again, it's never safe to look directly at the sun. This is one of our really big messages that we're trying to get out to everyone. We really don't want you to damage your eyes. We don't want you to go blind. We want you to have a wonderful event on April 8th and every other time you go out to view the sun. You know, you want to use indirect viewing, so you're projecting the sunlight somewhere else, or you're blocking your eyes with a very, very, very strong solar filter. So everything you've you know, heard of here is hopefully helping you think about safe techniques that you might have. Hopefully most people have a pasta strainer, those spoons that you can find in your kitchen with the circular holes in them, those will work as well. Everything that we've talked about in terms of safe, on the safe list, we'd encourage people to use. If it's not on the list, please don't use it. If it's something we haven't thought of. But looking up through your fingers is not safe. Casting the sun through your fingers is safe. Even if it's really, really, really cloudy, it's still not going to be safe to look directly up at the sun. So please keep that in mind as well. So on April 8th, the other really important thing that we're trying to reinforce for everybody in Ontario and beyond, what exactly will happen, what exact times the event will start will change depending on your location. So if anyone in the meeting today has a question about their particular location, I would encourage you all to hop online to the interactive. So this is timeanddate.com, Eclipse Map 2024, April 8th, and you can zoom in and check out anywhere you want. This map actually goes all the way through Mexico. So even if you're going down to Mexico to see it, you can check out locations there. And you can see the path goes up through Mexico, the US, and sort of up around Canada, and then out back into the ocean again. So you can follow the eclipse path and look in different areas. And only on the dotted line will it actually be totality, the center of totality. So that stripe in the middle, that's your totality. The best, longest totality will be on the dotted line in the very, very center. So that's the shadow of the moon hitting Earth. And I think I will just put up that again really quick, because I know that Sarah mentioned this earlier. The moon casting its shadow on Earth is a bit of a fun one, because you might be thinking, okay, so the moon is actually very, very small. And I just wanted to round off our coverage today, I suppose, by showing a little bit about how this might actually work. So if the moon is really so small compared to Earth, this can't be the right distance, and it's not. So the moon is actually much, much farther away than what a lot of people have thought of in the past. If we look at a real picture of the Earth and the moon, here's one taken from OSIRIS-REx, which was taken as the spacecraft flew about 5 million kilometers or 3 million miles away from Earth, and it looked back and it saw the moon going around the Earth. And this is actually not the true distance, because the spacecraft was at a little bit of an angle. If I kind of zoom out even more, and we have the sun, the whole Earth and moon is so small that we can't even distinguish it. So here I'm going to put the Earth and the moon to scale at the very bottom. And this on the left, that's the Earth. And all the way on the right, that little tiny dot is the moon. So if that's the true distance and size of the Earth and the moon, if I wanted to put them to scale with the sun on this graph, I would have to shrink this whole bottom line in between those two tiny little yellow lines here. And it would be so small, nobody could see it. So this incredible size difference, as well as the incredible distance all the way to the sun, this is actually what's making the eclipses work, because it just so happens that we are lucky enough to live on a planet with a moon whose size is about 400 times smaller in diameter and about 400 times closer than the sun. So it just so happens that, you know, if you take something that is bigger and put it farther away, it looks smaller in the sky. And if you've ever seen a tall skyscraper look like a tiny little toy on the horizon, that's exactly how this works. And it just so happens Earth's moon being 400 times smaller and 400 times closer means that it can exactly block the sun if it's at the right distance. So the sun and the moon actually have the same angular size in the sky. A cool trick. And it's all because of the distances involved. And so if the moon is going around the Earth, and I'm just put the moon and the Earth on the bottom in this case, the moon is going around the Earth, the sun is off in the distance, and the moon has to cast its shadow back onto Earth. It's actually really quite the distance that shadow has to travel in space. And so if we're trying to look at what's really happening during this eclipse, you can see it's a little bit of incredible scales of distances and sizes involved. And if we go ahead and look out in outer space to look for some pictures of how this will happen, of course the Earth is spinning, the moon is moving, the Earth and the moon is going around the sun. And fortunately, the Himawari 8, a Japanese weather satellite, was actually able to capture on a previous eclipse the moon's shadow moving across Earth. So I'm just going to put that on really quick if I can. Hopefully this lets me go ahead and play it. So this is the CIMSS satellite blog, and we're just going to show the moon shadow. So that's the shadow during a total solar eclipse being cast on the Earth. And there it goes, zipping across. See how fast it moves? It really is.
So Elaina, this is, here we are on planet Earth. We have this amazing coincidence that our one moon has the same angular size as the sun does. So on Mars, then, you've got your 2 moons, and Jupiter, you've got your 63, obvious, or however many. And of course, the sun looks so much smaller from those planets. But has any, just as an interesting astronomy problem, has anyone ever seen if what kind of coincidences are on those planets?
Yeah, so if you were trying to get eclipses on other planets, it would be a different case, right? So if we were looking onto some of the other planets in our solar system, well, Mercury's out of luck; it has no moons. Venus is out of luck; it has no moons. Mars's moons are so small they would never be able to block any appreciable amount of the sunlight.
True, but the sun is so much, it looks smaller for Mars. I guess even where that effect becomes even more noticeable is like Jupiter.
But it's not small enough to be blocked by those tiny, tiny moons.
Right. Those like practically asteroids. Okay.
And likewise, Jupiter is so much larger than its moons.
Right.
It would have, you could be under the clouds of Jupiter and have a total eclipse from Jupiter's moons. And we can actually see this because we can see the shadow of Jupiter's moons travel across its surface.
Ah, interesting.
You can actually watch the shadow of Jupiter's moons traveling across its surface. And
if you're in that shadow,
if you were in that shadow in the clouds of Jupiter, you would be very irradiated, but you would be blocked. Saturn, likewise Neptune, and likewise, of course, Uranus, of course, is a fun one because it's orbiting on its side. And Pluto is a really interesting one, even though it's not technically a planet anymore, because Pluto and its moon Chiron are so similar in size. And the sun is so small by the time you get to Pluto, it would have all kinds of interesting eclipses. So there are
very cool.
Yes, absolutely. And there's really interesting eclipse behavior in the solar system. And it's worth noting that the Earth and our moon, when held up to the sun, if we could put them next to each other, I'll just do that here. The Earth and our moon and all the other planets are so incredibly small. We just couldn't even, the sun is so much larger. As we move out through the solar system, this sun gets so incredibly tiny that it's actually, a good way to imagine the incredible distances involved. So I encourage everyone to have fun with their eclipse dynamics, and of course to watch out for their solar safety with this event and beyond. So I hope that we've covered most of the basics. If anyone's really interested in this particular eclipse and how it's different from other solar eclipses that have happened, I'm going to recommend the Eclipse Wise website, eclipsewise.com. And they actually have a lovely chart showing the path of this eclipse with the areas of partial eclipse for this particular eclipse cycle, which is part of Saros cycle 139, which is how solar eclipses are, well, used to be entirely predicted. And it goes all the way back to the Babylonians. Really fun stuff. So I think we're running out of a bit of time for the session today. So I'll recommend everyone to Eclipse Wise, and I think I'll just end with a last bit of solar safety, eclipse safety. Please do not look directly at the sun. Use solar safety where you can, and keep in mind that this April 8th, where you go will determine what you're going to see. All right, so Robin, any last thoughts from your on the road crew?
Just, clear skies for everybody, no matter where you are. I hope everybody has a great experience on April 8th.
Absolutely, I totally agree. All right, clear skies to everyone out there, and especially good luck to you and your whole crew. We hope
Thank you. We will need it.
All right, so I think this is the official sort of end of the broadcast. So we'll look for questions now. So there's a question here: how do eclipses affect Earth's ionosphere, and what implications do these effects have for radio communications and GPS satellite signals? So this is an interesting question, sort of about how the eclipse is going to affect our ionosphere as well as communication. But the eclipse really won't affect communication at all, because you have to remember the moon is actually very far away. It's just casting a shadow all the way down onto Earth's surface. And so I'll put up my long distance shot here, all the way down onto Earth's surface. And so all the satellites of Earth are usually, pretty much in low Earth orbit. There's a few things a little bit higher up, but they're all very close around Earth. And so all those satellites can communicate with Earth exactly the same, whether or not a shadow is being cast on them. What it will do is, of course, affect the temperature, because without the sun shining on it, the temperature of the atmosphere will decrease, and this can trigger, it can actually trigger thunderstorms as well as clouds clearing, and interesting weather patterns, but it's not going to have much effect on our satellite or radio communication. What will have an effect, of course, is the fact that right now we are in an active solar cycle, which is something we didn't really have time for. But if you're out there watching the disk of the sun, you might notice a few sunspots. And these sunspots are an indication of the activity level on the sun. And that activity level will affect GPS, satellites, and more. So hopefully that answers the question. All right, so I'm not seeing any other I'm not seeing any other questions on here. So I suppose it's time to just pass back over to our host, and we'll end the broadcast. All right, then thanks everyone for joining us today, and we'll pass back over to our hosts who started the meeting.
Right. I see someone has probably risen his hand. Yes. Should I open the microphone for? Yeah, I'm going to open the microphone or ask. Yeah. Go ahead with your question, Diana. Deepankar, you want to ask a question? Go ahead. Your microphone is unmute.
Yeah. Is it okay now?
Yes, it's working. Go ahead.
Yeah. I request if she can repeat how the use of colander that she mentioned for viewing it.
Yes. So this is the pinhole viewing technique. And what you need to do for this is you're casting a shadow on the ground. So if you have a pasta strainer or a colander, you take it outside into the sunshine and you cast the shadow onto the ground. You look at that shadow, and inside the shadow, you see that there are little holes where, the pasta strainer would have holes. Each of those circles is actually a small image of the sun. So during a partial eclipse, you will see on the ground in the shadow, the circles will become crescents.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and happy to help. Good luck.
Mm.
All right. That was fascinating. Thank you so much, Elaina and Robin and Sarah, for sharing your time with us and presenting such a very informative talk on the solar eclipse that is coming, and especially for the safety notes that everyone, I'm sure, is now better informed about them. And we know how busy you are in this time of the year, especially with this very special occasion, and really appreciate your time being with us. And with your permission, we are going to share the video of this session after we finish with that. And there are many people who are asking for the video to be looked at after the event. Thank you again very much. Francesco, anything we need to?
No, I don't believe so. I just want to echo my thanks as well. Those presentations were great. I'm glad Robin was able to join us from on the road. It's great to hear your experience and your travels towards finding totality. And of course, thank you to everyone for joining us in the audience and for participating and
Yes,
asking questions.
absolutely. Wishing you all a very good day on Monday.
Thanks
So much. Bye bye. Bye, Elaina.
guys.